I'm James Spann, Chief Meteorologist for ABC 3340, and this is the story of Hurricane Ivan, one of the most destructive hurricanes ever to directly strike the Alabama Gulf Coast. At the time of landfall on Thursday, September 16, 2004, Ivan was a strong Category 3, sustained winds 130 miles per hour with higher gusts. The landfall time during the pre-dawn hours at 2:10 a.m. Then during the day on Thursday, September 16th, Ivan moved right up through central Alabama, remaining a hurricane to Uniontown in Perry County, then as a tropical storm passing over Brent, Birmingham, Gadsden, and then finally moving up into northeast Georgia. Needless to say, the damage was extreme and widespread on the Alabama Gulf Coast in communities like Gulf Shores and Orange Beach. There was tree and power line damage statewide. In fact, at one point, 1 million Alabamians had no electrical service. On this DVD, you'll see Ivan covered in many different ways. For example, meteorologist Brian Peters flew into Ivan in an Air Force Hurricane Hunter from Keesler Air Force Base 2 days before landfall. During the landfall, part of our Gulf Shores crew was in a condominium complex on the immediate coastline. Their raw footage on here is absolutely riveting. You'll see segments of our live continuing coverage on ABC 3340, which lasted for 3 days, and then, of course, you'll see the aftermath from the air and on the ground.
Hurricane Ivan could hit Cuba's west coast this evening.
The hurricane is already whipping up surf in Cancun, Mexico. Right now, the storm is currently clocking winds of 160 miles an hour. That's a Category 5 storm. It's an Air Force C-130 Hercules that flies into the eye of the hurricane to measure the storm's strength.
ABC 3340 meteorologist Brian Peters made the 14-hour flight into the eye of the hurricane for a look at the brave crew tracking the monster storm.
The busiest person on board a Hurricane Hunter as we approach Ivan is the drop sonde operator. Drop sondes are small tubes containing delicate instruments that send back data every half second as they fall at amazing rates, 2,500 feet per minute. 3 drop sondes are launched as we go through the eye. 1 into the eye wall as we enter, a second as we pass the center of the eye, and a third as we enter the eye wall going out. Temperature, barometric pressure, and wind speed and direction from all 3 drop sondes come into the plane and are relayed back to the National Hurricane Center. The pilot and co-pilot hold the plane steady at 10,000 feet with the help of the meteorological officer. His job? To thread the plane through the middle of the eye, just like threading a needle. The flight can be routine at times. For some, there may even be time for a brief nap. But everybody is on his toes as we approach the eye. Everybody wants a window seat for one of the most powerful storms on Earth, a Category 5 hurricane. Ice crystal clouds cover the eye, so the effect is not as dramatic. But a patch of blue sky separates the top of the eye wall from the almost transparent cirrus clouds above us. The ride gets bumpy as we penetrate the eye wall. People bounce around as Ivan gives us a ferocious swat. The drop sonde operator confirms a barometric pressure of 26.87 inches, a sustained wind of 165 miles an hour, and a wind gust of 216 miles an hour. Ivan is a Category 5 storm. Our pressure readings put Ivan as the 6th most intense hurricane ever in the entire Atlantic basin. In the eye of Hurricane Ivan, this is Brian Peters, ABC 3340.
Meteorologist James Spann joins us now with a look at when we can expect Ivan to crash ashore in the Gulf of Mexico. James?
That's amazing stuff. Very few people get to fly into a Category 5 hurricane, and that was some really good stuff. Quickly, temperatures right now, upper 70s and low 80s. We'll go to the radar composite across Alabama, and we are relatively in good shape today. Showers quite light, quite scattered. We'll see the same thing tomorrow. Variably cloudy, maybe a brief shower or two, but the big deal is the big hurricane. This could greatly, and I mean greatly, impact our weather by Thursday of this week. The numbers have not changed all that much today. Ivan still packing sustained winds of 160 miles per hour. This is an amazingly dangerous Category 5 hurricane. The central pressure about as low as what Brian and the crew measured this weekend. It's down to 910 millibars. Now, in the last couple of frames, we've noticed a northward jog, but it seems like in the last frame, it's jogging back to the west. We still think the central Gulf Coast will be threatened directly by this hurricane later in the week. Now, the good news, we don't expect it to be as strong by the time it reaches the Alabama or the Mississippi or the Florida Gulf Coast. The sustained winds will have dropped down, but still it should be a major hurricane. Here's the latest track from the Hurricane Center. If this is correct, Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock, we'll have 140 mile per hour sustained winds in Ivan, just south of Gulf Shores and Mobile Bay. The official track takes it inland near Pensacola during the pre-dawn hours Thursday, early Thursday morning. And look at this, the position near Montgomery, and the winds are still near 100 miles an hour. If this is the case, this system could create wind damage in the state like Hurricane Opal in 1995 and like Hurricane Frederic in 1979. Both of those caused major damage well inland across the state, along with widespread power outages. And then with time, it weakens, moving up through North Georgia and then back up into the northeastern states. So our big day from this system will likely be Thursday. We're talking the chance of flash flooding, the chance of isolated small tornadoes and spiral bands around the storm, and also the chance of widespread wind damage like Hurricane Opal in 1995. Now, as you saw earlier with the computer model output, most of the models are still west of here. I would not be shocked if they pulled this track more to the west, maybe including directly the Alabama Gulf Coast. But of course, between now and Thursday morning, a lot can change, but it certainly looks like we will be under the gun, possibly a direct hit near Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Pensacola, and then some really rough weather up this way during the day Thursday. Needless to say, we'll watch it very carefully.
When and where Ivan will make landfall in the U.S. is still anyone's guess. What forecasters do know is Ivan is shaping up to be a monster of a hurricane.
Good evening. I'm Brenda LeDunn.
And I'm Dave Baird. Here's what's happening. A mandatory evacuation order is now in effect for people who live in mobile homes in Geneva County, Alabama. That follows a voluntary evacuation order for non-residents of Baldwin County. This, of course, is the reason for the evacuations. Hurricane Ivan is churning towards the Gulf Coast. This is a look at the storm as it sweeps past Cancun. And with the damage from the hurricane comes victims who need help. ABC 3340's Christopher Stein joins us now live from Clanton with a look at how the Alabama Red Cross is responding to this need. Christopher?
Well, Dave, the Alabama Emergency Operations Center has been activated and preparations for Ivan's arrival are underway. Meanwhile, the Red Cross is preparing as well, but the busy hurricane season has the organization strapped for cash.
So they're opening how many shelters tomorrow?
They've worked around the clock, some for 3 weeks straight without a day off. And while more and more Red Cross volunteers mount up to help those affected by Ivan, manpower is close to being maxed out.
We are absolutely stretched thin.
It's not an issue of manpower that concerns the Red Cross. There's a financial concern. Charlie and Francis are believed to have cost the nonprofit organization $63 million. Now the pressure's on to replenish dwindling accounts.
From a financial standpoint, this could be the sort of thing that could really deplete resources. Fortunately, we've got some time for the American people to step up and help us keep the disaster relief fund replenished.
The donations are used for food, water, and shelter and other items to be used by victims. And while the Red Cross will accept donations for designated areas, it doesn't encourage it.
In some cases, you may have more designated for a particular area than you really needed. And that's a situation we want to try and avoid. The other thing it lets us do is when it goes directly into the disaster relief fund, it allows us to pre-deploy and get ready for the next disaster.
And Governor Bob Riley is briefing the media right now here at the Alabama Emergency Operations Center on the state's game plan. We'll, of course, have an update on that game plan coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. Reporting live from Clanton, Christopher Stein, ABC 3340.
Christopher, thank you. Well, more than 14,000 Red Cross volunteers are in the field and ready to handle whatever Ivan brings.
And this morning, more than 24 people left Shelby County, headed for the Gulf Coast. Volunteers from as far away as Nevada and Idaho brought their disaster relief trucks to Alabaster, where they were dispatched. Some volunteers have been through this before, but it takes a long history with the Red Cross to remember such a busy and dangerous hurricane season.
Back in the 60s, yeah, she was a bad one, but nothing like this where you had 3 hurricanes, major hurricanes back to back.
Now, some volunteers are on standby because Red Cross resources are stretched thin. And right now, let's get a check on where Ivan is and where it's headed. For that, let's turn to James Spann right now. James?
Hey, Brenda, first off, let's establish this fact. We don't expect Ivan to be this strong when it makes landfall. This is a rare Category 5 storm. But having said that, forecasting the intensity of a big hurricane like this, there's very little skill. So we'll have to watch it very carefully. Even if it does weaken, it still should be a major hurricane. That's a Category 3 when it reaches the central Gulf Coast. Here's the track. This is the blend of all the computer models. Now, this red line is the official National Hurricane Center track. It puts it into Pensacola early Thursday morning in the pre-dawn hours. But if you notice, a majority of the computer models take it west of that point over parts of Alabama, which means we are definitely at risk. And if these tracks are correct, much of Alabama could see enough wind to cause major damage, especially straight line wind damage during the day Thursday. A big situation for us. We'll have much more coming up later in the weather segment. Brenda?
All right. Thank you, James. And there are several shelters in central Alabama open for people leaving the Gulf Coast, hoping to get away from Hurricane Ivan. The Talladega Superspeedway has room for 30 RVs. Stockdale Baptist Church will feed those camping out there. Grace Community Church and Talladega Creek Baptist Church are also taking storm refugees.
Governor Riley has declared a state of emergency in Alabama because of the approach of Hurricane Ivan. The Category 5 storm continues on a path that could take it to just about anywhere on the Florida or Alabama coast. We'll have the latest tracks.
Good evening. I'm Brenda LeDunn.
And I'm Dave Baird. Here's what's happening now. What you're going to look at here is the latest satellite image of Hurricane Ivan. At least 68 people are now dead in its wake. Ivan is taking aim at the Florida Panhandle and maybe Alabama.
Governor Bob Riley met with his cabinet, representatives of the Red Cross and the National Weather Service to come up with a game plan if Ivan strikes Alabama. Right now, evacuations along the coast of Mobile and Baldwin counties are voluntary, and the price gouging law is in effect. The governor has declared a state of emergency, so all rescue agencies will be ready.
Alabama also is full of praying people, and this is a time for people who believe in prayer to say a little prayer, because with the agencies behind us and with God's help, we'll make it through it fine.
Now, Mobile is starting to look like Florida. Folks are buying up plywood and bottled water. Home repair store aisles, of course, are packed. But people in South Alabama say they're ready.
I'm actually going to send my family over to Houston, and I'm going to stay home and guard the fort and take care of our business. So we're anticipating it. We're ready for it.
And in Panama City, a mandatory evacuation will begin at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Tourists began to realize they'd have to cut their vacations short. Business and homeowners are boarding up windows and stopping up on necessities.
I mean, I'm a little nervous about it, and I don't like it too good because I never have been in one.
Now, the unpredictable nature of the storm has caused evacuations from the Florida Keys to the Panhandle and maybe even as far west as Mobile.
And of course, tracking a hurricane is a little like flying a kite. You're never quite sure where it's going to go.
But nonetheless, the predictions are essential for safety of those in their paths. The night team's Joy Benedict takes a closer look at what it takes to predict Ivan's path.
It's a storm that spans more than 300 miles. So it's not hard to see coming, but predicting its path, that's a different story.
It does seem like Mother Nature has a mind of her own.
Kevin Pence spends his days monitoring the weather. He works for the National Weather Service in Alabaster. He says predicting Ivan started weeks ago.
I believe the disturbance came off the west coast of Africa into the Atlantic Oceans.
Ivan was first seen on satellite as a cluster of organized thunderstorms, but to determine its strength, someone had to fly into it. Meteorologist Brian Peters rode inside this Air Force C-130 Hercules over the weekend to do just that. They used what's called a dropson. The crew actually dropped the device out of the airplane.
They continuously gather data as it falls through the atmosphere and hits the ocean.
The dropsyn determines air pressure. The lower the pressure, the stronger the winds. The stronger the winds, the stronger the storm. The difficult part comes when scientists try to predict a path. You may have noticed there are usually many. They're determined by previous paths of similar hurricanes and current pressure in the area.
There's some high pressure over Texas, kind of starting to turn it more to the north.
Right now, it's believed Ivan will make landfall somewhere between New Orleans and Tallahassee. And since it's expected to be a fast-moving storm, it's actually being compared to Hurricane Opal. Opal hit landfall back in 1995. Because of its speed, Opal was still a hurricane when it crossed Montgomery. That means with Ivan, wind damage will be a greater concern than flooding.
All indications are Ivan will move fast enough that, yeah, maybe we'll get 6 inches of rain somewhere.
Now, another interesting fact about hurricanes is that they actually condense when the atmosphere is colder at night and then expand during the day. That means you'll be more likely to see flooding in the overnight hours and tornadoes during the daylight. In the newsroom, Joy Benedict, ABC 3340.
Thank you, Joy. And the already busy and destructive hurricane season is having a major impact on those who try to help others. And as Hurricane Ivan approaches, the Red Cross has different concerns. It's not just an issue of manpower that concerns the organization, but there's a massive financial concern. Hurricane Charlie and Francis are believed to have cost the Red Cross $63 million. The nonprofit organization is now feeling the pressure to replenish its dwindling bank accounts.
From a financial standpoint, this could be the sort of thing that could really deplete resources. Fortunately, we've got some time for the American people to step up and help us keep the disaster relief fund replenished.
All donations are used for food, water, shelter, and other items for disaster victims.
More than 14,000 Red Cross volunteers are ready to handle whatever Ivan brings. Volunteers from as far away as Nevada and Idaho brought their disaster relief trucks to Alabaster, where they were dispatched. Some volunteers have been through this before, but you need to have a long history with the Red Cross to remember a more busy or dangerous hurricane season.
Carla back in the 60s, yeah, she was a bad one, but nothing like this where you had 3 hurricanes, major hurricanes back to back.
Other Red Cross volunteers have been placed on standby. Talladega County has 5 shelters for people escaping Hurricane Ivan. The Talladega Superspeedway has room for 30 RVs. The Stockdale Baptist Church will feed campers there. Plus, Grace Community Church and Talladega Creek Baptist Church are taking storm refugees. And the Ironation Fire Department and Blackberry Lane Community Church. Well, everyone wants to know, will all these preparations be needed?
And that depends on where Ivan lands. Chief Meteorologist James Spann has the very latest. James?
Hey, Brenda and Dave, this is still a very powerful hurricane. Category 5, sustained winds at 160 miles per hour. You can see it passing the western tip of Cuba tonight, slowly moving towards the north-northwest at about 8 miles per hour. Now, the new computer model data beginning to come in, and we'll take a look at this. This is late data within the last 15 minutes, and if you extrapolate this motion out, it continues to carry it right up toward the Alabama Gulf Coast. Of course, this is one model here, but many of them do that. And because of this, the Hurricane Center within the past hour has posted a hurricane watch from east of Morgan City, Louisiana to St. Marks, Florida. That includes all of the Alabama Gulf Coast, and we still see many, many indications that we might have a direct hit on the Alabama Gulf Coast late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, with major problems inland as far north as Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Anniston, Gadsden. By Thursday afternoon, we're talking the potential for widespread tree and power line damage.
This is an ABC 3340 special report, preparing for Ivan.
Ivan forces an exodus along Alabama's Gulf Coast. This monster storm that's already laid to waste island after island in the Caribbean, leaving many in Alabama to fear the worst for their homes and businesses.
But he's probably going to level everything down here on the coast and everything.
And it's not just the coast that could feel Ivan's terrible wrath.
We're going to be looking at hurricane winds all the way up to Birmingham.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for this special report preparing for Hurricane Ivan. It's a powerful Category 4 hurricane expected to make landfall along Alabama's Gulf Coast early Thursday morning, sometime between 4 and 7 o'clock. Let's go live now to Gulf Shores. This is a live look at the surf, and weather conditions there will deteriorate rapidly in about 24 hours, and the landfall point should be very close to either Gulf Shores, Fort Morgan, or Dauphin Island down in far south Alabama. Let's go now to our pinpoint neighborhood WeatherNet site at the Alabama State Park at Gulf Shores. We can show live weather conditions from there. We're watching the wind numbers, and so far the wind is not that extreme. The winds are averaging out of the east at 19. During the day tomorrow, those will likely increase rapidly to 50 by afternoon, and by early Thursday morning, we could see winds down here well over 100. And so far today, about 1/3 of an inch of rain at Gulf Shores, 33/100ths of an inch. Parts of the Alabama Gulf Coast could easily see over 5 inches of rain. Now, let's go and take a look at what's happening with the latest on our Sky Tracker system. This is fairly impressive. Now, keep in mind the center of this storm is still way off in the Gulf of Mexico, but notice now the nice banding features coming from coastal radars. We have no radar across the ocean, so we can see the circulation from radars as far away as Mobile, as Eglin Air Force Base, as Tallahassee, and Tampa. The march continues slowly towards the north at about 10 miles per hour, and we're still targeting Dauphin Island and Mobile County for landfall early Thursday. We'll take a look at the satellite perspective, and the numbers have not changed at all since we last spoke at 6 o'clock. This is a dangerous Category 4 hurricane, maximum sustained winds at 140 miles per hour. Excellent symmetry. There's no evidence of any shearing. There's no evidence of any weakening this afternoon. In fact, if anything, the system is actually better organized, and it's right on track. Now, the hurricane warning extends all the way from southeast Louisiana to Apalachicola, but that warning is centered directly on the Alabama Gulf Coast. Want to run the latest computer model. This is an in-house model we run, and there's been no change in our track. The model takes it into Mobile Bay early Thursday morning and then moves it up to a point near Clanton during the day Friday. The troubling issue with this, and we pointed this out in the early newscast, it looks like the models are trying to slow down Ivan in response to higher pressure north of the system. Notice the time here. This is Friday at 12 noon. If that's the case, we could see a very long period of high wind and heavy rain that will increase the chance of flooding across the entire state. It could be Saturday before the wind and the rain finally move out of the state. Here's a look at the official forecast track coming from the National Hurricane Center, and like the track we saw on that model, it has not changed all that much. The National Hurricane Center projecting landfall at approximately Dauphin Island or Mobile. One very important point, we don't want you to focus on that one red line because this is a huge hurricane in terms of the wind envelope. The hurricane force winds extend out 100 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds extend out over 250 miles. In fact, here's a look at the graphic showing the tropical storm force winds in light blue, the hurricane force winds in yellow and the darker colors. We'll put this in motion and watch what happens. These tropical storm force winds reach a point near Montgomery by 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And by the time this reaches the Gulf Coast early Thursday morning, more than likely we'll see tropical storm force winds in the greater Birmingham area. And by the way, that's winds in excess of 39 miles per hour. The weather conditions will continue to deteriorate during the day on Thursday, and we will have great impact across the northern end of the state. Here's the bottom line. If you live in places like Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Anniston, Gadsden, basically anyone that can watch me in our television market, this is what to expect. Sustained winds, that's constant winds from 50 to 70 miles per hour during the peak of the storm. Now, the gusts could be as high as 70 to 90 miles per hour. Needless to say, with these numbers, we could see extensive, widespread tree and power line damage. And this is a remarkable fact here. We could see sustained winds of 30 miles per hour for 30 consecutive hours. Needless to say, if you got something outdoors like lawn furniture, trash cans, get those secured and into a place where they can't blow away. Rainfall total, 6 to 12 inches. Flash flooding will be a major issue, especially if the trend continues towards slowing this down. Isolated tornadoes possible and spiral bands coming around Ivan. And we believe the worst time for us will be from roughly 7 o'clock Thursday morning through 1 o'clock Friday afternoon. Now, down on the coast, Christopher Sine of ABC 3340 has been covering the storm throughout the day. And Christopher, how are preparations going down your way?
I think the key word here, James, is stressful. This is an extremely stressful time for the people here on Gulf Shores. After all, Ivan could be the most intense hurricane to hit this area in some 25 years when Frederic hit this area. And there's no question, today people worked extremely hard to meet the deadline. The race against the clock is winding down. The sound of electric saws and drills echo through Gulf Shores. As many evacuated to the north, others found themselves in a mad dash for the hottest commodity, plywood. Business owner Glenn Waite drove 2 hours to Mississippi for his load of lumber.
It's hard to get. You know, they were selling, like say yesterday, 3,000 sheets an hour.
As gasoline supplies ran low, some propane companies lit a flame to depressurize the holding tanks. The usually busy city of Gulf Shores became a ghost town.
They told us to be out by 10. They were going to cut off the elevators, the power, and the water.
As the sun set and the crashing waves came in, each time with a little more force, locals stopped predicting what may happen.
There's really no telling. There's no telling.
With the rush to find plywood slowing down, many just decided to pack up everything.
We're just moving out because whatever's left's going to be ruined. We're just taking the best of everything and leaving.
And a mandatory evacuation has been issued for this area. And starting tomorrow around noon, several bridges in the Gulf Shores area will be shut down as well. And the National Guard will be on hand, going around and checking the areas and, of course, expecting major structural damage. Reporting live from Gulf Shores, Christopher Sine, ABC 3340.
Christopher, thank you very much. The state of Alabama ordered evacuations in South Alabama from Interstate 10 south. That's basically the southern half of Baldwin and Mobile counties. Those evacuation orders are one of the lessons learned after Hurricane Opal hit the state 9 years ago. There are many parallels between Opal and Ivan. ABC 3340 meteorologist Brian Peters, part of our team on the Gulf Coast. Brian, you're an old-timer like me. You've done these hurricanes many times over the years. Give me your perspective. How does this stack up with Opal and Frederic?
Well, James, this one really scares me because when you think about Frederic and you think about Opal and you think about the extent of damage that occurred, you got to remember that Ivan is already a category higher than either one of those storms. And Opal did extreme damage all the way up the Alabama-Georgia line, all the way to the Tennessee line. So this one is really a worrisome storm as it's moving, as you said, slowly northward. At the present rate of movement, we do expect tropical storm force winds to be on the coastline tomorrow morning, increasing through the day and possibly by sunset up to hurricane force.
Okay, Brian.
We have some video.
Go ahead.
We have some video of my flight Saturday into Ivan. I must admit, having flown in, it didn't seem as bad, but then I was wrapped in the protective cocoon of a C-130. I'm not in that cocoon now. We're out here where people have made precautions. They've boarded up buildings. It's almost become a ghost town here.
That was my question, Brian. You've been through so many of these. You sense that people really did take this evacuation order seriously this time?
I sense that they really did. I can't help but think that the effects of Charlie and the effects of Francis has really attracted a lot of attention, and people really are taking this seriously. Now, today has been a relatively quiet day weather-wise. As a matter of fact, it's been a very good weather day. I can't help but wonder if perhaps today was a lot like the Saturday before the Galveston 1900 hurricane that killed over 6,000 people. The weather became very, very nice. Fortunately, flags were up telling people not to go swimming. But we've already seen the beginning of damage. Notice this video taken just before sunset of the erosion that's already taken place along the beach. Now, it's relatively subtle, but we were told by folks that this used to slope off just nice and gradually, and already you can see a bit of a shelf where some of the sand is being washed out. This is definitely going to be a major storm for Alabama and the southeastern U.S., and we've got to remember, it could be and will probably be worse than Frederic and worse than Opal.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much. We'll be checking with Brian often throughout the next 2 days. ABC 3340 is gearing up to bring you complete coverage of Hurricane Ivan's landfall. Our news audio will be simulcast on several radio stations Thursday during our long-form coverage. That way you can hear us on your radio. Get complete updates on 91.9 FM in Birmingham, 101.5 FM licensed to Columbiana, and 107.9 in Tuscaloosa. And also this evening, our report is on 92.7, Thunder 92.7 in Anniston. Coming up on the special report, see how local utilities are gearing up for Hurricane Ivan. Birmingham city officials have already decided to close schools Thursday and Friday as Ivan comes inland in Alabama. Auburn University has canceled classes for the rest of the week. Alabama State and Auburn University in Montgomery are canceling classes for Wednesday. Other central Alabama school districts plan to decide on closings tomorrow. We also have word tonight that Birmingham area Catholic schools are closed on Thursday and Friday. Of course, the other big worry as Ivan moves inland this week, the problems with your power. Alabama Power is preparing for the possibility of major power disruptions. Alabama Power spokeswoman Carrie Kurlander joins us now live from the Utility Storm Center. And that's the big question I've heard all day, Carrie. People are hearing we might be without power for 7 days or longer. Is that true?
Well, James, you all have been doing an excellent job of helping people expect the worst. And when you're talking about an event of this size, Category 4 or Category 5, there are going to be sustained outages. What you see behind me is what we call the Storm Center, and the people who work here 24/7, they've been here for a few days, they coordinate our resources. So they will be prepared to mobilize massive amounts of people, trucks, materials at a given moment and be able to concentrate those resources on heaviest hit areas.
Carrie, the comparable storm for many people in recent memory was Hurricane Opal in 1995. Approximately 500,000 people went in the dark in Alabama. How long did it take to get everybody back online with that one?
You're right, James. That was about 475,000 folks who had outages, and it was about 7 days to restore, fully restore that storm, and that was a pretty good record. So that does give you some context to understand a storm of this magnitude. If it's even bigger, we could be looking at sustained outages 7 days, but we won't know until it comes in.
Carrie, if during the day Thursday, one is home, the power goes out, do they need to report that outage to the power company?
Yes, we would encourage people to report their outages to 800-245-2244. And James, while you're at it, I'd also encourage people to report any down lines that they see. Obviously, safety is a key issue. When we are looking at massive outages, we're looking at a lot of down lines. We would encourage people to assume that they are all live. Obviously, keep your children, keep your pets, keep yourself away from those lines, and do call in and report those lines as you see them down. Assume they're live, stay away from them, and let us know.
Carrie, thank you very much, and thanks in advance for the work the power company will do over the course of the next 7 days. The Jefferson County Emergency Management Agency opened its Emergency Operations Center tonight. The EMA's Alan Knifer joins us now in the studio. And Alan, tell me what you have been doing in your agency in preparation for the storm today for the Birmingham metro area.
We've basically been alerting all our emergency response forces to be prepared. Go ahead and check all vehicles, check our critical facilities, and make those preparations we need. We've pre-positioned a lot of our boats on our low-lying areas where we have to go rescue people in those areas. But again, as we hope everybody and our citizens do not be driving out in those kind of weathers, and don't drive through standing water. It creates problems for us.
Looking back on some of the big hurricanes that came through Birmingham in years past, you do think of an Opal in '95, a Frederic in 1979. What were some of the problems with previous hurricanes that came through Birmingham of this size in the past, Alan?
As any, we'll have a lot of debris down, trees down, and low-lying areas will be with a lot of water trapped in those areas. We still advise our citizens to have a family protection plan, an emergency supply kit for 72 hours, and officials will be working very closely with getting people back online as quick as possible.
We have a lot of people watching and listening to this program right now that are perhaps just getting back from work, and they realize this is a serious situation. What should they do in the next 18 hours to get ready, to get some specific steps that people need to do right now?
We're encouraging all our citizens to have a 72-hour supply kit, emergency supply kit. If they're not sure what's in that, they can contact our office at 254-2039 or the Red Cross National Office or on the internet at tandyland.com. Get that checklist. Make sure you've got especially a battery-powered radio that will tune into the news media, TV stations, and radio stations to get emergency information. And we work very closely with media getting out there. A water supply, non-perishable food, and those kind of items, and a flashlight, especially at nighttime.
And one more question for you, Alan. In the Birmingham metro area, this is a transportation hub. We're talking the international airport. We're talking the major interstate systems. How do you believe, in your opinion, this will impact travel in the greater Birmingham metro area on Thursday and Friday?
Hopefully we've got enough of our citizens have taken heed to what we're saying and won't be out traveling so much on Thursday and Friday. We'll probably have a lot of down trees, restricted travel in a lot of ways. Our public works crews will be out as soon as we can and get out on the roadways and clearing those as fast as we can for emergency response to people. We'll probably look at restricted travel at the airports because the planes can't land and take off in those areas. So people need to be aware that don't go out in public unless you have to.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much for you and your agency's work. Coming up in our special report, a look at the mass evacuations taking place along Alabama's Gulf Coast. You're looking live at the ABC 3340 staff on the scene at Gulf Shores. We have a large crew there. They'll be helping us with coverage over the next 3 days. We appreciate their work. And we should point out that many shelters are now being opened in central Alabama. One of our greatest concerns, it's for those people that live in manufactured housing. And let me just say this. If you live in a mobile home, and I'm talking all 67 Alabama counties, and especially those watching us, tonight you need to identify a place where you can go tomorrow. And then tomorrow you need to go there, whether it's a shelter, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, perhaps someone you go to church with. You need to make those arrangements tonight and plan to be there for a couple of days on Thursday and Friday. We will have a complete list of shelters running on the air late tonight and on the ABC3340.com website. A complete Ivan section is available there. Many people have already left Alabama's beaches, headed north for higher ground in an effort to escape Ivan's fierce winds and rain. Kevin Stewart of our news staff now joins us live. Kevin, you talked with many people fleeing from Ivan today.
Yeah, I sure did. In particular, college students who are trying to get out of town. Obviously, if you have a child down here on the Gulf Coast, you're going to be at least a bit concerned. I can tell you that the University of South Alabama has about 200 students from Jefferson County alone. A different kind of rush on Mobile's college campuses. The rush to board up windows, the rush of students to get off campus.
Actually, I know my mom's actually thinking, well, okay, I send my child off to school 3 hours away from here, and the only thing I'm thinking about is, my child being safe and being in that comfort zone, you know what I'm saying? So when something like this happens, that really, agitates them. So right now, I think she wants me home right now.
University of South Alabama students Stephanie Sharp and Corin Wilson are packing up, ready to get back home to Selma, hoping it is far enough from Ivan's terror.
I stay with my grandparents, so I just want to make sure they're in the state of comfort, be there to console them and make sure they're all right.
Most families are not just a bit worried about their children, they are extremely worried. But Pelham's Caitlin McElvaney says her parents are very calm about all this.
I don't really think they understand how bad it's going to be. They seem kind of in denial because, I'm freaking out and they're just real calm about it. And they're like, oh, it's going to be okay. Just don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. We're going to get blown away down here.
Students here just found out this morning they had to evacuate campus by 1 p.m. Students without a place to stay can stay on campus. 2 buildings are set up as shelters. McElvaney isn't going to a shelter. She isn't even going back home to Metro Birmingham.
I'm going to Louisville, Kentucky.
Why?
That's where my boyfriend is from, and he's driving up there, and I figure the farther I get away, the better, so I don't have to pay for a hotel or anything.
Also, they are clearing out on the Spring Hill College campus. Imagine what 18-year-old Greg Muller's folks must be feeling tonight. They don't get storms with Ivan's fury like this back on Maryland's coast. And what did Mom and Dad have to say?
They just wanted me to get away from the coast, so they went out to time with them.
All right, now Bay Minette is the county seat here in Baldwin County. It's in the northern part of the county. And James, you could probably give folks a better idea. Is that a better place to ride out the storm than, say, Mobile?
Yes, it is. Bay Minette is a little more inland. The farther north you go, obviously, the better off you'll be. So that's not a bad place to be. It's going to be awfully windy and wet, but it beats being right there south of Interstate 10. For anybody that watches us with relatives in Mobile or Baldwin counties, the prime concern, those people south of Interstate 10, Bay Minette is north of Interstate 10. Coming up next, hear from an Alabama woman who rode out Ivan's fury in Jamaica. Hurricane Ivan is one of the strongest storms on record in the Atlantic Basin. It's already swept through 9 countries in the Caribbean. Ivan so far is blamed for 68 deaths in countries paralyzed by horrible damage. Angela Mabry saw the hurricane hit Jamaica right in the middle of her honeymoon. Mabry rode out the storm on the 5th floor of a Jamaican resort. She says the winds were more fierce than any tornado, bending the palm trees around and howling through the boarded-up windows.
You could hear the wind coming through the window panes where they had those boarded up as well, and you could hear it howling real loud. And it went on like that till probably about 4 or 5 o'clock the next morning.
That was an ordeal that she will never forget. ABC 3340 News will open a hurricane helpline tomorrow at 12 noon. It will be staffed by ABC 3340 News employees. Our goal is to give you up-to-date information on shelters and other preparation plans for this storm. We've also developed a partnership with these area radio stations to carry an on-air signal Thursday of our audio. In other words, you can hear us on your radio across central Alabama on those radio stations. 91.9 in Birmingham, 101.5 in Shelby County, 107.9 in Tuscaloosa, and a late edition in East Alabama in Anniston, 92.7. Stay with ABC 3340 News for the most complete coverage of this storm. Now, one more time, let's review what will likely happen for the next couple of days. This is the current position of Ivan down in the southern Gulf of Mexico. The track is unchanged. We are very confident that landfall will be on the central Gulf Coast, very close to Mobile Bay. And notice the huge wind field with this storm. That's one point we'd like to stress. Don't focus on the point in the middle. Tropical storm force winds extend outward over 250 miles. Hurricane force winds, that's 75 mile per hour winds or greater, extend out over 100 miles. This is 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and you can see based on the model projection, hurricane force winds should begin at Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Dauphin Island on the Alabama Gulf Coast. There's no sign of weakening at all. We'll get a new reconnaissance report shortly. We'll have that on the news coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, but it looks like this will come home as a very major hurricane. And one more time, this is what you can expect during the day Thursday into Thursday night over almost all of north and central Alabama. Sustained winds of 50 to 70. That would likely create widespread tree and power line damage. And as you heard earlier, make plans now for long extended power outages. Some people could be without power for 1 week. Winds gusting from 70 to 90 miles per hour. The sustained winds will likely exceed 30 miles per hour for 30 hours. This will be a long onslaught of high wind and very heavy rain. Speaking of rain, 6 to 12 inches. Some spots could see 1 foot, especially if Ivan slows down. Isolated tornadoes, worst weather, 7 o'clock Thursday to 1 o'clock Friday. It looks like this could indeed be a benchmark storm for Alabama. Perhaps the inland effects stronger than Frederic, the storm in 1979, and Opal, the storm in 1992. Perhaps even stronger inland than Camille in 1969. Preparation is the key. We urge you to be prepared tonight for this big storm. More coming up on ABC 3340 News in 1 hour at 10 o'clock.
ABC 3340's Kevin Stewart is live in the Gulf Shores where officials are bracing for the worst. Kevin, what can you tell us?
Well, Maggie, those winds are picking up. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then maybe this behind me is worth 1,001. The red flag is up. And Gulf of Mexico is coming in fast. About 20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, we began to see water move in about 30 yards up to about the boardwalk here at the Gulf State Park. I want to show you some video we shot earlier, late last night and early this morning. We drove along Highway 59 North, and what you see is pretty much what you get. Gulf Shores is boarded up, taped up. Even Walmart is closed, and of course that is extremely unusual. When you get to about Loxley, which is just south of I-10, that's when you began to see some activity. Now over in Mobile County, downtown in Midtown Mobile, with its grand old trees and historic old homes, pretty quiet right now. Downtown hotels in Mobile County near Mobile Bay are going to be shutting down this morning. You more than likely know that Mobile is one of the rainiest cities in the country, and that area downtown does not take rain very well. Evacuations are in Baldwin County from south of I-10, which is where we are here on Gulf Gulf Shores. And I'm told that people who have not evacuated but can get themselves over to the local high schools will be taken to some type of shelter, because right now there are no shelters available here in Baldwin County. We'll continue to follow this story and have another update for you in the next half hour. Reporting live from Gulf Shores, Kevin Stewart, ABC 3340.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for that report. And of course, we'll continue to check back with you throughout the morning. Meteorologist John Olchu continues to track Hurricane Ivan, and he now joins us with the very latest.
Yeah, we're going to take a look here first off at Sky Tracker, show you this morning what the network of radars are starting to pick up, and that, of course, is the outer rain bands of Ivan moving inland. Now, the big question on everybody's mind and what we continue to get here in the weather office is, what are we going to expect? This is it. Take a look at these certain facts that we have about the storm. If we could switch over to the graphic system, thank you. Sustained winds 50 to 70 miles per hour, gusts from 70 to 90 miles per hour, 30-mile-per-hour winds for over 24 to 30 hours, rainfall of 6 to 12 inches, isolated tornadoes. When is the prime time for all of this to take place? Starting about 7 a.m. tomorrow morning and lasting till about noon or 1 p.m. on Friday. Get ready. This is going to be a historic storm, not only for coastal Alabama, but for central and north Alabama as well. All right, we'll show you a good look at the hurricane this morning here on the satellite. And this jumps around just a little bit, but in the last few frames here, when it moves, notice that we're losing some of the coloring in there. That is a good thing. I will say that while they did not decrease the wind speeds with this on the 4 a.m. update, the barometric pressure was up in the storm, and definitely looking a little bit ragged here on this last satellite photograph, but still a Category 4 storm with 140 mile per hour winds about 200 miles south of Mobile Bay at this time. A lot of things going on in everybody's minds. Today, you've got still some time to prepare. You can see that we do have some of the outer rain bands coming onto the coast. It will be a while before they make it into central and northern Alabama, probably by late this afternoon. In those rain bands, the wind is going to pick up, and you may see some gusts between 25 and 30 miles per hour. But until then, you've got some time to watch this storm or prepare for this storm. Here's a look at what the forecast is. Landfall somewhere from the Alabama-Mississippi border over to Mobile Bay tomorrow morning. This has 8 a.m. on Thursday, maybe a little bit sooner than forecasted here. Seeing some projections, this may be as early as 3 a.m. One of the good points with this, though, is that they're now projecting the storm to move a little bit slower. That will allow the storm to weaken some by the time it gets into our area, but I still think we're going to see some sustained winds between 50 and 70 miles per hour. Then the storm will move on upwards into Tennessee and may meander through parts of Tennessee and become a real flooding threat. Even around here with 6 to 12 inches of rain, we could have problems with flooding as well. Real quick look at where we expect power outages. Scattered power outages through coastal Alabama by about 4 a.m. tomorrow, and then of course that will move northward throughout the day. So get ready for some extended periods without power. Like we've been talking about, you could be without power for 3, 4, 5, maybe even as long as a week, as we've been looking at some of the estimates with Opal. 475,000 people lost power. Some folks didn't have it back for a week. Cloudy and breezy, showers by afternoon, and east wind at 10 to 20 miles per hour today. 84 is your high, some gust as high as 25 miles per hour. Heavy rain tonight, damaging wind possible. 70 is the low, east wind at 25, gust up to 60. That's mainly after midnight and more towards the morning hours. Here's a look at the 7-day planner. Of course, the heavy rain, the wind, the power outages all take place tomorrow. And like we said, this is going to start about 7 a.m. tomorrow and last through about noon Friday or 1 p.m. That'll be the time that we'll be watching for the heavy rain, the damaging winds, and the isolated tornadoes across the area. Maybe some rain lingering through Friday and Saturday and into Sunday, and hopefully drier and nicer as we head into next week. Maggie?
All right, John, thank you for that update. The National Hurricane Center describes Ivan as large and extremely dangerous. The Gulf Coast is preparing for the hurricane's landfall. And ABC 3340's Kevin Stewart is live in Gulf Shores with an update. Kevin?
Maggie, the waves continue to rush the beach here at Gulf Shores. We've got new video just in, shot by award-winning photographer Bill Castle. I want you to take a look at this. The waves are now approaching beachfront property, like this hotel near Sea and Suds. I would say that the water is probably coming in about 40 yards off the shore, which is eroding. As the sun begins to come up, we're getting a better view of what's happening behind us right now. With the waves are pretty impressive. I'll have another live update coming up for you in just a bit. Live from Gulf Shores, Kevin Stewart, ABC 3340.
All right, Kevin, thank you so very much.
ABC 3340 has news crews on the Alabama Gulf Coast. Our reporters Kevin Stewart and Christopher Stein, along with meteorologist Brian Peters, are in Gulf Shores. Right now, let's go to Kevin Stewart live in Gulf Shores. Kevin?
Linda, it is raining right now, and really we began to first feel some sprinkles, a little mist, probably around 7 o'clock after our last live report on Good Morning Alabama. Now, if you take a look behind me, you'll see something that's really incredible. We've begun to see the water just fill up the beach here at Gulf Shores. We began seeing this, I can tell you, I was out here doing live reports at 10 o'clock last night, where we were doing our live shots. That's covered by water right now. The beach has eroded. It's been really bad out here, and really this is only the beginning, really. I want to take you back and show you some video that we shot not too long ago. This is video giving you indication of wind speeds, the palm trees blowing clearly in excess of 20 miles an hour, and winds will begin to pick up. When you look way back into the Gulf, you can see the waves, the incredible pictures of waves for about as far as the eye can see. I would guess that the waves, those breakers, they're about 8 feet tall. I want to take you back actually to about 8:30 to give you an idea of what things were looking like at that time. Much has changed since our first live reports here on the beach at 5 o'clock. Daybreak has given us a clear visual of just how much the beach has leveled off because of erosion. And by 7 o'clock, when we came out here, the water was rushing across the beach, but there was not water filling up this area on the beach. All right, we're back out live, and meteorologist Brian Peters joins me. Brian is going to be of immense help to us out here to help do the signs out here and teach us what's going on and teach everybody at home what's going on. Brian, one of the things that we've been talking about is the difference between the eye of the hurricane, which is supposed to go over Dauphin Island, and the the eastern quadrant, which is supposed to be the worst part, which is where we're standing right now. Can you explain that to me?
Right. A lot of people look at a hurricane as a point. We focus on the eye, and we put the latitude, the longitude, and if you put that on a map, it's a pencil point. That's not a hurricane. You have to keep in mind that hurricane force winds go out nearly 100 miles from that center. So we have to think of this as an entire entity, not just that point.
And why is it on the eastern side that is so strong? You were trying to explain to me that it's kind of like the engine almost?
Well, what's happening is you have to remember that as the storm is moving, you're adding the motion of the storm to the east side, or based on the direction it is going, and you're subtracting it from the west side. Now, when a storm is moving at 10 or 15 miles an hour, as Ivan is, that doesn't seem to be a lot, but that actually makes a 30 knot or almost a 35 mile an hour difference between the winds on the east side and the winds on the west side. Plus, the storms tend to be not completely symmetric. During Ivan's lifetime so far through the Caribbean, it was a very symmetric storm at times, but dry air has now drawn into the west side of the storm. This dry air is a negative influence on Ivan, and we've seen the cloud pattern basically erode on the western side, and that has caused a little bit of a decrease in Ivan, sort of what we expected to happen. Not much, as John just said, just 10 miles an hour, 10 knots or so, but that's enough to bring things down a little bit, and anything we can take off the top of this storm would be great.
But a Category 4 is still
a Category 4.
Jeff Myers, ace photographer, I want him to pan back out here into the Gulf. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, it's begun to die down a bit, but about an hour ago, around 9 o'clock or so, the pictures were absolutely, I'm standing out here getting wet and was amazed at how dark and misty it was. It's cleared up, but you can still see that. Are those clouds, rain?
They're clouds and rain. It's a combination, but what's happening is we're now into that rain shield. Before, we were in the clear, and it was only sprinkling, as you pointed out, but now we've gotten into that big rain shield. If you look at it on radar, you see that we're on the edge of that rain shield, so it doesn't look as dark as when it's approaching us right now. Another thing you pointed out earlier is that when we got here yesterday, you could see 3, maybe 4 waves late yesterday afternoon. Now, out over that water, out over the Gulf, you can see waves as far as we can see, which is not a great deal of distance with our visibility being reduced by the rain.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. We're going to continue to monitor the storm. Reporter Chris Stein is also on the scene here. He's going to have an update coming up for us in a little bit. Running live from Gulf Shores, Kevin Stewart, ABC 3340.
ABC 3340's Christopher Stein is watching the waves down at the Gulf Shores. We have information for you right now from Christopher Stein.
Okay, Linda, I'm actually on the third step of a series of steps that lead down to the beach. I had actually planned on being on the sand itself, but the water has just rushed in. It's actually a foot deep in this area just below us as these waves continue to crash in and the winds continue to pick up. The sand is beginning to also pick up and somewhat slap me in the face, if you will. Also, these winds and this rain is a huge concern to the people in this area. I want to show you now some video that was taken just a few moments ago from photographer Bill Castle. If we could go ahead and roll that video. These waves have just been crashing into the piers. The winds have picked up. The waves have a curling pattern to them, if you will. If you've ever been on the West Coast or if you followed any surfers events, you can see that they call it a pipeline, and that's what a lot of these waves are doing. And these waves have just swept in as the outer bands of Ivan have entered this area. People, of course, have been somewhat taunting Ivan, saying, "Come on, Ivan," putting them on the boards of their homes and situations like that. But this is a storm that is not to be taken lightly. It's extremely dangerous. Now, back out live now, I'm just trying to give you an idea of the winds that are beginning to pick up in this area. And the water right there, there it is. The water continues to rise and continues to pound this area. It was just 10 years ago, and this entire beach was actually renovated, and the sand had been brought in after previous hurricanes and previous storms, and the entire area had been redone. They're expecting now this beach to be somewhat washed out, and where I'm standing, they're expecting at least 3 feet of sand in this area, and by 1 o'clock the winds here could be in excess of 50 miles per hour. They're now asking for people that are in this area to leave. There is a mandatory evacuation, but some people have decided to stick around, and as the wind continues to come in and the rain continues to come in, this area is simply going to get a pounding. Let's go back to you in the studio.
Now, Christopher, we saw the signs, come on, Ivan, but any signs of folks out there on the coast?
Earlier this morning, there were some people out here, onlookers, if you will. A lot of people with video cameras and typical cameras were out here just taking some photographs of the waves as they came in. And of course, this is somewhat of a historical situation for these people because the rain and the wind and the beach erosion has not been like this in almost 25 years. That's when Frederic hit this area, and now they're simply watching their beach somewhat erode away. This entire area, Jeff, if we could just pan out just a little bit, this entire area, we were actually out here last night at 10 o'clock. The area you're looking at, this is where people sunbathe and play volleyball, and it's a state park. And right now, the entire area is being washed away. It's quite amazing, and it's quite a scene to actually look at these waves as they continue to crash in.
Amazing, but it also scary, and folks should heed the warning of getting out. Thank you, Christopher. We'll check back in with you.
You hear us talking about the hurricanes and looking at them on radar and watching them on satellite, but nothing beats eyes on the ground, and that's where Kevin Stewart is, and we're going to check in with him now. Kevin?
John, we haven't been able to do live shots for you down here in Gulf Shores because we had to move to safety. I want to roll some video for you. Not only has the beach begun to flood, but now Gulf Shore Parkway, Gulf Shore State Parkway, right there, you can see we had to move out of the way because police said if we did not leave the park, we might get stuck. Now, right now, we're about a mile inland. We're at a strip mall right now, Winn-Dixie. Actually, we're not too far from Gulf Shores City Hall, and we're going to continue to ride out the storm here and continue to file reports for you. Right now, you can see that it's a light rain right now, not too bad. And in fact, what's not too surprising though, is that now that we've moved off the beach, the wind is a little bit different out here. John?
Kevin, that's incredible. Yeah, you're starting to see that storm surge get blown out ahead of this on the eastern side. These storm winds coming out of the south and just moving this wall of water up towards Gulf Shores, and that's probably why you're starting to see that coastal flooding there. Give you the particulars on this storm at the 10 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. They dropped the wind speeds a little bit, down to 135 miles per hour. Still a Category 4 storm. And let me tell you this, they still forecast it to come inland as a Category 4 storm, and if that happens, it will be probably the only Category 4 storm we've seen in the last 100 years. I went back through the records and looked at them. All the ones that have come inland that you remember, Frederic, Opal, have all been Category 3 storms that have impacted the coast of Alabama. Of course, Camille was a Cat 5, but she came inland over Mississippi. Ones that have come inland over coastal Alabama have all been Category 3 storms. Everybody measures kind of what they expect a hurricane to be, or how to measure the winds and effects from Hurricane Frederic and Opal. Frederic moved through in 1979. Opal came through in 1995. Both made a lot of power outages. Folks were without power for weeks, and something we probably are going to see from this storm. We've had wind gusts already. Show you our weather net. They're not bad yet. 27 at Anniston, 20 at Gadsden, 22 at Talladega, 22 at Clanton, 23 at Birmingham, but they're going to come up. Go ahead and show you the satellite here. We'll mention this. We've also been watching a buoy that's down south of Dauphin Island. It is now reporting sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, gust up to 67 miles